tonight, Hurricane Estelle not eager to excite as it begins to struggle in the eastern Pacific. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 18th. Well, here we are with another day in the tropics, and we have Hurricane Estelle, which, using the latest information given the lateness of the CWB, is actually weakened. It's down to 80 miles an hour, and that will be what the latest National Hurricane Center advisory will be running as this Tropical Weather Bulletin comes out. We're up to 36 storms so far this year. The average is 92 in a worldwide season. It's day 48 of Atlantic hurricane season, and it's the same picture as it has been for quite some time now. No system is active and unexpected in the next 5 days, although of course we are likely going to be seeing that pattern change as we head into August. In the Eastern Pacific, it's day 65, and we have Hurricane Estelle, which oddly enough has ended up weakening after its appearance started to degrade quite a bit earlier today. Unfortunately, it does not look like we're going to be seeing much more strengthening out of this for those who were having high hopes for this storm, considering it was originally forecast to become a Category 3. It might not even make it to Category 2 now. In the Western Pacific, you can see what's going on here. Nothing active, and nothing expected in the next 5 days. It's pretty quiet here, and it's always good when that happens, but usually when we have those quiet months, we end up seeing something pretty significant in the late season. In the North Indian Ocean, we have Invest 96A that is still active for whatever reason. It's got a 0% chance still, so despite its ability to survive for a consistent amount of time, it's still going to be the same 0% chance it's always had, especially given the fact that the system is actually weakening. And here is Hurricane Estelle. It's not really looking as impressive, a dry air intrusion looking to sneak its way at the moment, and you can kind of see it's trying to expose the northern low-level circulation. It's not succeeding yet, but it is attempting to at the moment. It's just not really looking like the healthiest hurricane in the world. Definitely going to be interested to see if that continues to be the case. Atlantic, here you can see that there's nothing much going on. There's an extratropical low to the west of the Iberian Peninsula. There's also one that's been traveling to the southeast of Greenland, but other than that, not much really going on in the Atlantic side of things. In the Eastern Pacific, you can see Estelle. It's still in some healthy conditions, so it's still got the opportunity to strengthen, but it's only got about 24 to 36 hours to do so before those conditions start to deteriorate pretty rapidly for the storm. In the Western Pacific, you can see a disturbance that has been continuing to push off the coast of Japan, and then you can also see there are a few little disturbances to the east of the Philippines. Nothing that's really significant in the slightest. In the North Indian Ocean, you can see that burst of convection that keeps shooting outwards and doing nothing, and really dying in the last few frames. That's 96A. Not really looking great at all anymore. Some monsoon activity still going on as norm in the Bay of Bengal. In the southwestern Indian Ocean, it is pretty quiet. There's next to no cloud cover here. The most cloud cover being in the top right of your screen, and that's just a few showers and thunderstorms. Nothing at all significant, so pretty dry here. Australian region, same thing is pretty much the case. Not much going on. Little cloud cover overall. It is a pretty dry day in the southern hemisphere, to put it lightly. Sea surface temperatures look like this. It's around 28 to 29 across much of the eastern Pacific, at least to the east of Baja California. As you head west there, those temperatures do decrease to around 25 to 26, especially as you enter the central Pacific. Gulf of Mexico, it's around 28 to 29 with those 30 degrees Celsius temperatures in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. The Caribbean looking to be around 28 to 27. Same thing for the main development region, and as you head into the western Atlantic, you can see those temperatures of near 29 degrees Celsius in the Gulf Stream, although there are some isolated patches of 30 over there. Bay of Bengal, it's around 28 to 29 for the majority of the region, and as you head into the Arabian Sea, it's around 27 to 28, but those do decrease as you head southwestward. As you go into the Western Pacific, those temperatures are around 28 to 29 for the entirety of the basin, although it does decrease or increase to 30 as you head into the northern Philippines and extend it a few hundred miles east of there, going into the northern Mariana Islands, and then some still. Cooler temperatures naturally as you head north into Japan, but even then, those sea surface temperature anomalies, you can see the anomalously warm temperatures continuing across the Japan and areas northward. There's also some pretty warm temperatures in the Mediterranean and northern Atlantic. Other than that, Atlantic's looking above average, Eastern Pacific near average, Western Pacific above average, and Bay of Bengal is above average, while Arabian Sea is starting to look just a bit below average. Ocean heat content values look like this. The despot is actually starting to die out in the Eastern Gulf. However, the Caribbean continues to see those ocean heat content values rise, as well as the main development region. The Western Pacific pretty much hasn't really changed by our eyes much, considering the fact there's just been this massive dome to the east of the Philippines, and the Eastern Pacific continues to not look that great when it comes to ocean heat content overall, still polarizing to see. Here's the 18Z GFS run. You can see what ends up going on with Hurricane Estelle. And we're only going to be looking at the Eastern Pacific for the first 120 hours, as no other basins develop activity by then. And you can see what goes on. Looks like the GFS levels it off. Not strengthening it much further, with it peaking in the next 36 hours, a few millibars deeper than what it is right now, before weakening begins to take place as it continues to head that northwesterly jog. And eventually we are going to be seeing that weakening, and it is likely that the storm is down to tropical depression or weak tropical storm strength by this coming Friday. You can also see the GFS starting to develop a new disturbance. That's really the only thing that's going on at the moment, because there just really isn't much going on otherwise, so things are looking pretty quiet. The only action that's going to be going on is going to be in the Eastern Pacific for the time being. Looking at the longer range, it's pretty much only the Eastern Pacific once again that has activity, and you can see what ends up going on with this. As of right now, it looks like the GFS develops another disturbance in about 5 or 6 days to the south of Mexico. Eventually ends up strengthening in standard GFS fashion, takes a little bit to do so for once, but eventually it does get itself together, becomes a hurricane, and by hour 240 it's up to Category 2 strength. Just so that way we don't have to cover this in the Scilly range. This is like the Scilly range portion, because we have to go into the Western Pacific for that. But it does end up crossing into the Category 3 realm, peaking at 959 millibars, and then eventually it does weaken off as it turns north. So nothing too dramatic there at all. Remember, you can go to our store and buy some merch. We also have the new phone cases for those who have the S22s and iPhone 13s and want to flex us for whatever reason. But, of course, obviously, we are part of Pillow Gang. Hashtag Pillow Gang, guys. Oh dear, what have I started? Looking at the Scilly range, we have something going on in the Western Pacific again, it seems. Nothing too dramatic like we have seen in recent weeks. But you can see a tropical storm forming at around hour 2:58 to the northwest of the Mariana Islands. It ends up strengthening slowly while having what it appears to be a pretty large rotation, so it's arguable whether it is a tropical cyclone or not. Eventually ends up affecting the Okinawa Islands with tropical storm force winds, before moving westward and strengthening quite considerably to become a Category 2 typhoon, or high in Category 1, before it makes landfall in China to the north of Taiwan there. So that is an interesting scenario. Eventually it seems that there is another storm trying to get itself together, or two storms for that matter, at the end of the run. One several hundred miles to the east of Japan, and another one a few hundred miles east-southeast of Taiwan. So obviously a lot of this is looking unlikely, considering the fact that this is not even a consistent thing that models have been following. The only thing that we're really going to be seeing is stuff in the Eastern Pacific. Otherwise, Western Pacific, Atlantic, North Indian Ocean, all the Southern Hemisphere, all those basins are going to be remaining quiet for at least the next week and a half or so. Looking at the on this day, we're going back to July 18th, 2014, where we had 3 systems active, one of them being Super Typhoon Ramazan, which would affect the Hainan Peninsula at a Category 4 or 5 landfall. It was pretty strong regardless, and it was pretty devastating for the Hainan area, one of the worst storms to impact there. We also had Tropical Storm Matmo, that would later on become a Category 2. And we also had Tropical Storm Wally in the Central Pacific. It's rare that you get on this day with a CPAC storm. It's like memories that we, used to have of a CPAC storm existing. Regardless, you can find more of our on this day products powered by Cyclone History on the bottom bar below. With that being said, the next name in the Atlantic is Danielle, followed by Earl. In the Eastern Pacific, we're looking out for Frank, followed by Georgette. And in the Central Pacific, while we can get avocados from Mexico, I'm pretty sure Hone can't be required from Mexico, or anywhere for that matter. In the Western Pacific, we're looking out for Songda, followed by Trazes, and in the North Indian Ocean, the next two names here are Citrang, followed by Mandis. It's worth interesting that we got the Disney name of Mulan after Trazes. That should be lovely to see what that ends up doing for joke reasons. In the Australian region, we're looking out for Darian and Ellie. In the southwestern Indian Ocean, we've got Ashley and Belita. And in the South Pacific, we've got Holly up next. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.